Graphic artist Mike Mignola of HELLBOY fame and Bram Stoker award-winning author Christopher Golden have teamed up to write Baltimore, an illustrated novel that is a feast for the eyes and the imagination. Welcome, Mike and Chris.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
I hear Baltimore began as a concept for a vampire graphic novel.
Yeah, I came up with the idea for Baltimore while I was watching a movie, and it was a boring movie, so my mind wandered. And I started plotting this thing, but realized it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and after a while I realized I'd never get around to doing it as a comic. It was just too long and too involved. I wrote up my notes for it, and Chris took it and turned it into what it is now.
Well, and the beautiful thing about it is that I have been hearing Mike talk about this thing for years. He's been planning it for so long that I was really surprised when he decided he didn't want to do it as a graphic novel, that he wanted to do it as a novel.
Tell us the story of Baltimore.
A young military officer, and his entire unit is destroyed in the battlefield, and he's horribly wounded. And while he's out there thinking he's going to die, in the night he is attacked by something vaguely vampiric. And he is wounded already, and then much, much worse by this creature. But he also manages to wound it. When he does so, he scars it forever. And the vampire decides that from that point on, as vengeance, it's going to murder everyone and everything he loves. And through that, he's forged really into the ultimate vampire hunter.
This book is part reading experience, part viewing experience. Fill us in on the format and the artwork.
I began with a lot of very specific visuals for this project. So when we turned it into a novel, I still wanted to get a chance to draw all the fun parts. And as the book becomes darker and darker, I think the illustrations reflect that. It's almost like laying in a soundtrack.
Mike, your fans know you from the much-beloved HELLBOY. What will fans of HELLBOY find in Baltimore that they'll also like?
For years, people have been telling me that they like HELLBOY because it's gothic. With Baltimore, I can say, you think HELLBOY's gothic. This one over here, this is really a gothic thing. This is my big gothic monster.
Chris, your novels, most recently The Border Kind, are contemporary horror and dark fantasy.
With Baltimore going back and trying to present a sort of war-torn World War I era Europe was actually really interesting to me. And also just getting an opportunity to work both in the gothic but also with folklore, which is shown in things like The Border Kind.
Within the book's main plot are numerous stories of the supernatural, told in a mysterious meeting of men in a parlor. Why did you choose to weave your tale this way?
We have a setup in Baltimore where much of the story is told by three men in a bar who know Baltimore from different eras in his life. Each of them have had an experience with the supernatural, so that when it comes time for them to understand what Baltimore's story really is, it isn't impossible for them to accept or believe. In fact, each of them actually bears real scars from their contact with the supernatural.
They represent sort of the different phases of Baltimore's life, because you have the guy who knew him as a kid, the guy who only knew him after he was the scarred veteran, and the guy who cut off his leg.
The surgeon.
Was the surgeon who was, yeah. So you had the guy who basically was the bridge between these two characters.
While Baltimore now is nothing but this weapon, once upon a time he was just a guy with a wife that he loved and a title and a home and all of those things.
These two master storytellers have created a gripping story of valor and of evil, and have enhanced the experience with stark and stunning illustrations. Fans of graphic novels, of fantasy novels, and of horror and adventure alike will be captivated by Baltimore.